Hey robot makers, hope you have a good day so far. So do you want to learn about the Raspberry Pi compute modules and why they are great for all kinds of projects? Then this is the show for you. So let's dive straight in. My name is Kevin, come with me as we build robots and projects, bring them to life with code and have a whole load of fun along the way. Right, let's get over to our couple of keynote slides here. So yes, I think this is one of Raspberry Pi's best kept secrets. You don't see the compute modules kind of in many projects. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. So let's have a look. What on earth are these compute modules? So these are a system on a module, and they're a variant of the flagship Raspberry Pi models. So they've actually had these from quite a long time ago. We'll have a look at the exact timeline in a moment. You can see the early ones were in these kind of SODIMM type modules that look like a memory card, and you can see the system on a chip is right in the middle there. These are particularly well used in industry, commercial applications, including digital signage, thin clients, process automation. However, they are available to you and I, so we can build these into our projects as well. We'll be having a look at how we can do that and what kind of projects they work well with. So the most recent one is the Compute Module 5. I've got one of those here with me. I've also got the previous generation, which is the Compute Module 4. I can just hold one of those up so you can see just how tiny these are. If I hold up a Raspberry Pi Zero, you can see they're a little bit taller than a Raspberry Pi Zero, but not quite as wide. And interestingly, they don't actually come with any kind of connectivity other than, if I just pull this apart here, other than these two little connectors on the bottom. So these are designed to be slotted into some kind of development board, and that's what we've got quite a few of to look at today. We've got these little Waveshare boards we're going to have a look at a little bit later on. So let's have a look at these boards, shall we, in a bit more detail. So I've actually built a couple of projects with these boards already. Let me show you this first one, which is, I made a little Atari 2600 case. This is actually hiding inside the official Raspberry Pi Compute Module development board. So you can see it. Let's go full screen a second, you can see this. So this is the Compute Module 4 I/O board, and you can see there, there is the Compute Module 4 sat in there. It's even got the PCIe connector, so they did have PCIe way back on the Raspberry Pi 4. You've even got the USB card there. You've got a couple of USB sockets there, just two USB sockets. Let's focus. We have an Ethernet connection, and we have two full-size HDMI connectors. We've also got a little real-time clock battery there, as well as the 40-pin header. If I just move this little piece away there, you can see we've also got a whole bunch of headers. So we've got two cameras and two display connectors, so four connectors altogether. And we've got some little header pins there. These are for selecting and configuring this development board. So these development boards, the idea of these is when Raspberry Pi is working on the compute modules, they can put all the different types of connectors on there, and there's plenty of space to work with. They're not kind of cramming it into a tiny little board. They can work on the features, develop the code for it, and then later on they can kind of miniaturize this into whichever form factor they're working on. So these often come first. So that was the first project that I worked on with a compute module. And another project that I worked on, if I go back to my slides there, is I've actually not finished the project. So I've built this camera project before. This uses a full Raspberry Pi, I can't remember if this is a 4 or 5, this is probably a Raspberry Pi 4. And I was sent a really small, it's by the guy who does Raspberry Pi, what's it called, Raspberry Pi Finder, that's not the right word. The website you can go to see where all the Raspberry Pis are located, Raspberry Pi locator. He actually sent me a really small board, and it's before I had any compute modules spare. And the idea would be you could put this really small thin board into a camera type project. You've got a connector for the camera, and they've also got a connector for a display. So that was one of the projects I haven't finished yet, but I will definitely come back to very shortly. So you can see there we've got the Compute Module 4 I/O dead board, and you can see it plugged in there. I actually installed RetroPie on there, so I can use it as like an arcade machine because it's an arcade device. Let's have a look at the compute module timeline. So here's a little timeline I put together of all the different compute modules and kind of when they came out. So in 2014 we had the original compute module 1, and that followed the Raspberry Pi 1 style processor. We then didn't go for the Raspberry Pi 2. When the Raspberry Pi 3 came out, we had the CM3 module. And you can see that there's also these light variants. So the light variants don't usually come with Wi-Fi, or they can optionally have Wi-Fi, and they don't have the eMMC memory, which is like a storage, flash storage on the board. We can use that storage instead of using an SD card, and we're going to have a look at the speed bump that you get by doing that as well. And I'll show you a real live running Compute Module 5 that has eMMC memory on it. Then we had the Compute Module 3, and that's when the Raspberry Pi 3 Plus came out, which had the Wi-Fi module. You can see there's a great big system on a chip Wi-Fi module on that one there. And then there's also the Wi-Fi-less version of the Compute Module 3 with the L. That signifies the light version. Then a year later we had the Compute Module 4, and that's the form factor that we're now familiar with, which is these little boards, really cute, and they have those 2 connectors on the back that kind of just push into place. So these are really small edge connectors, and they simply just push into place. Showing this larger board here. This is a Compute Module 4. This is a Compute Module 5 board that it's going into, so if I switched it on, it probably wouldn't work. But if I push that into place there, it is just a drop-in replacement, and away we go. So interestingly, I can put a Compute Module 5 into the Compute Module 4 dev board, but I don't think it works the other way around. So there we go. That's how they connect in, and it simply just clicks into place, and then when you want to pull it out, you just give a little bit of a pull, and away it comes. And that means that you can then have access to all the different types of interface that you have on these boards. So that's the Compute Module 4. There was the light version that was released the same year as well. We'll have a look at all the different combinations that you can have. There's quite a few. And then the Compute Module 4S came out. So this is the Compute Module 4, but in that SODIMM kind of format, in the sort of long format. Then a couple of years later, we got the Compute Module 5 and the Compute Module 5 Lite version. And then just this year, we've had some additional Compute modules launched. So the Compute Module 5 16 gig came out. So that came out just early this year. And then also the Compute Module 4 extended temperature version. So this one is designed to work in really extreme temperature conditions, again for more commercial types of application. So it can go from really, really cold, is it like -40, to a really, really hot temperature. So definitely check that one out if you're looking for some kind of extreme outdoor Raspberry Pi action there. Cool, so the anatomy of a Raspberry Pi module, let's have a look at one of these. So we have on the very top of the board there, that little board is the eMMC flash. We'll have a look at what eMMC is on the next slide. We then have the RAM, so this is the sort of, the flash is like the storage, so this is where you store your files on the operating system. The RAM is just your working memory. We've got the processor right in the middle there. And then optionally at the side, we also have the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth module as well. This version has the Wi-Fi on there, and it also has a tiny little antenna connector, which you can see just there, that little round, that's the antenna connector. So they are available with or without Wi-Fi. They are available with or without the eMMC flash, and you can choose between different sizes of flash and different sizes of RAM. So the matrix for which one you want to buy is quite complicated. So let's have a look at how this works from a storage perspective. So if you think about your SD cards, I've got a number of little SD cards on my workbench here. So these are these tiny little storage cards. They're actually quite slow. So these were designed originally for things like cameras, file transfer, not really working, not as a working disk for a small computer, but they're very, very cheap. So that's why they use quite a lot in these types of single board computer. So you can see there, the low end ones, the class 10, I think they can do between 10 and 30 megs per second, whereas the high end ones can do 150 to 300 meg per second. Next up then is eMMC storage. So on this board here, that's this little chip at the very top there. That's our eMMC storage. And that's much faster. So you can see from a low end perspective, 50 to 150, high end 200 to 300 megs, and that's the read speeds. So SD, if you didn't know, that stands for Secure Digital, and eMMC stands for Embedded Multimedia Card. So just so you know your acronyms. And then of course we have the most recent thing we've been using in Raspberry Pis, which is the NVMe storage. That's the Non-Volatile Memory Express. And that's orders of magnitude faster than all of the previous ones. In fact, is it 2 orders of magnitude faster than the SD card? And you can really tell this when you switch on a Raspberry Pi that's got an NVMe card in it. It's really fast to boot up. So between 1,500 and 300 megs per second, and that's on the low end. And then on the high end for Raspberry Pis, because they're generation 2 or generation 3, 3,000 to 5,000 megs per second reading. Now in theory with NVMe you can get up to 10,000 to 14,000 megs per second read, but that's on the generation 4. Raspberry Pis currently only support generation 3 on the chipset. So there we go. Come at me in the comments if I've got any of that wrong, but I just wanted to lay out the different speeds of memory and why eMMC is available built into these little boards here, which is that chip just there. Cool. So we have options, we have different variants of the Raspberry Pi compute modules. We have the no eMMC and we have the ones with eMMC. You can see the little chip is missing from that on the top row, on the right hand column versus the left hand column. And then we have the Wi-Fi and no Wi-Fi, and the Wi-Fi chip also includes Bluetooth connectivity as well. So if you go for the no Wi-Fi, you also get rid of Bluetooth as well. So this is dependent on what your needs are. So when you're looking at your project, do you need Wi-Fi? Do you need Bluetooth? Do you need that eMMC storage, or are you going to run off an SD card? Or is there some other kind of technology that you're going to be using, such as NVMe, depending on what the board is that you're using. And then you can get different sizes of RAM. So we have between 2 and 16 megs, going up in that 2, 4, 8, 16 configurations. And that's available for all 4 of the boards. And then we have the eMMC. So obviously there's a 0 gigabyte version if you don't have eMMC. That's what they call the light version. And then we have 16, 32 and 64 versions of the eMMC storage. So it's not a great deal of storage available on these. 64 megs in kind of today's world isn't very much, but it's much quicker than the SD card and probably a lot more reliable as well. So we can have every variant in every flavor of these compute modules. So if you go onto the website and you're looking for them, sometimes you can get with a Wi-Fi, but you don't get the eMMC, and you want the 8 gig versus the 32 gig storage, and you'll often find that the one that you want is actually available. These are quite hot, and there isn't that many of them in circulation available in inventory. So definitely check out RP Locator if you want to find out where there is stock for these. If you like these videos and you want me to make more of these kinds of videos, please drop me a like. Let me know in the comments if you have a compute module, if you're using this for any projects. Let me know what project you're using on. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. It means so much to me. And it really, when I see those numbers go up in a day, it really makes me in my happy place. And I do go live every single Sunday at 7 o'clock. We're in British summertime now, so we're now following the daylight savings time in the US. So 7 o'clock is when we go live. Okay, I've got some boards I want to show you from Waveshare. So full transparency, Waveshare have sponsored this video by sending 4 different boards that we can have a look at. We can have a full play around with these in the show today. One of the other things I was just going to mention, but it's actually buried away in the back of my room there, and it's the XGO robot dog that I showed. I think was that Elect Freaks who produced that. That has a compute module for inside the face of the robot. It's buried away just behind the robot's screen, but it's you can tell because it's the same kind of size as one of these. So that's another example of a compute module being used in a project. Right, let's have a look at the different boards then, shall we? So first of all, we have the, let me just find the right one here. This is the Compute Module 5 Nano B board. So you can see I've got it just in my hand here. So it's really, really small. It's the exact same kind of dimensions if I just put this Compute Module in the back of it. So you can see this is Compute Module 4 again, just using this for sort of illustrative purposes. So you can see that it just clicks on the back. You get that little bit of separation there between the 2 layers. And you can see all the different things that we have on here. So we've got a USB-C connector. hold this up this way, we've got a USB-C connector, which is just there. We have Ethernet connector just there. We've also got these little connectors. One is for the real-time clock and one is for the fan, so you can put a fan on top of this as well if you wish. It also has a space for some header pins. I've got the header pins somewhere. I'm not actually sure where they are, but essentially in the box you get the 40-pin header. Doesn't come soldered on. I'm not sure why they decided to leave that off, but that's how it comes. And we also have on here a USB 3 there. We've got two MIPI connectors. These are for the camera or the display, so we've got two just like on the Raspberry Pi 5. And we also have just there, that is a HDMI Mini. So that's the same kind of version that is on the Raspberry Pi Zero. So if you've got a Raspberry Pi Zero, I just put that next to it. You can see it's the same type of connector there for the video. So just running through those features just off the slide there to make sure I've not missed anything. So 40-pin GPIO header, which can go in the middle there. We have the HDMI Mini for the connecting the video, USB-A for connecting up any kind of keyboard, mice, any kinds of USB device, PCIe. So this does have, I believe, a PCIe connector on it. Let me just find that if I just open up the board. Just trying to separate this without it feels like it's going to break when you do it, but then it doesn't. So on the back there you can just see this white connector here that says PCIe. So that's where we can connect in things like the NVMe or any kind of add-in cards. The AI cards can connect through to that as well. I'm not sure how they would work with the pins and everything, but you can essentially connect it up. You don't actually get any of the header, the cables inside the box. That's worth noting. We also do have a 3.5mm jack. So just there you can see we have an audio jack, which was sadly removed from the Raspberry Pi 5. It was just they had to make a decision on space on the board, and that was one of the things that went. We've got USB-C for power and programming. We'll have a look at the programming in a second, how we can actually flash the RAM on our compute module, the eMMC. So there's a USB-C there. And we've got the Ethernet connector, so we can plug in wired cable if we want to do that. We've got the two MIPI connectors, which are for the camera or the display. The SD card slot, so on the back there there's a regular kind of SD card slot. Now it's worth mentioning, if you go for a compute module that has the eMMC on there, you cannot boot from the SD card. You can just use the SD card as like a drive to read things from, like a camera card for example, but you can't boot from it. So just bear that in mind when you're trying to get this thing to boot and you can't figure out why does it not boot. It also has a real-time clock connector on there, so let me just find that one. So this little connector that's just here, that's the real-time clock connector. See if we can get that to focus in a little bit better there. Yeah, it really doesn't want to focus. And we also have the fan connector, which is the sort of chunky one that's just there, that white one. And we also have power and boot buttons. So just like the regular Raspberry Pi 5, which has a power button, we also have a power button just there, as well as a boot button. So when we want to flash the eMMC storage with a new operating system, like using the Raspberry Pi imager, we have to hold that down, plug in the power, and then from our computer, I'll show you this in a minute, we have to run a very special program called USB boot. This all seems very, very hacky and not consumer friendly. And remember, these boards are designed for commercial setups, so that's probably why it's not quite as slick as just flashing your memory card or your NVMe or over the network. So that's the CM5 Nano B. So it's a tiny form factor, really accessible via the GPIO pins. I particularly like those. I think that including that on the board is definitely a plus. I also like the display and the camera connectors. There's lots of flexibility there. This one could easily be the drop-in for that camera project I was talking about. And if you think about how small this is, you can make a really compact camera with this. You just need some kind of battery or something to power this. The audio jack, I think, brings back some much missed audio connectivity. So you can have some headphones, a speaker, whatever you want connected to that. And the Ethernet connector means you've got all that kind of flexibility for wired projects. So if you're building something like a NAS, for example, and you wanted this as the brains, you could do that using the Ethernet connector. And the board is only $17.99 plus local taxes and shipping, whatever that might be, wherever you are based. So that's the full all singing, all dancing Compute Module 5 Nano B board from Waveshare. Next we have the A board. So the A board is much more pared down. So we've still got the 40-pin GPIO header. We've got one single USB 3. We've still got the power buttons to turn this on and off. The USB-C for powering the board. We have the two MIPI connectors for the camera or the displays. An SD card slot for reading if you don't have the eMMC version of the compute module. There is the real-time clock connector, which is just there. We have the fan connector, and like I said, we have those boot buttons as well. But this is a much pared back version of the compute module. So you can see there, we've only got a couple of connectors on there. Very, very simple. No Ethernet, no HDMI, interestingly. So you'd have to set this up and just have the setup work. If you have multiple boards, you can potentially set up the storage, the OS, everything on here. Take that off the board that you've set that up from. So, for example, if you're using the full-blown base A board, for example, you could program it on there, take off the compute module, and then slap it on the back of here, and then have that kind of embedded within your project. These are designed to be embedded computers, and that's why we have boards like this with no video out. It's a more basic version of the Compute Module 5 Nano B. Great for projects that only need GPIO or camera connectivity, hence that camera project I was talking about. And they're also ideal for robotics projects, so where you don't need video, you've just got this thing embedded within your robot. And in fact, one of the projects I'm looking at is redoing my QB robot, which you may have seen on previous videos. So I've got this new version, and I'm going to look at putting the compute module into this and have it take up a lot less space. It's priced at $14.99, so it's very, very affordable, plus local taxes and shipping as well. Right, next up is one of my favourite ones. I've actually got this plugged in here. Let me just shut this down, and then let's have a look at this one proper. I'm just going to shut that down real quick because of that eMMC storage. In fact, it's already turned off. Just this board. So this has actually got my Compute Module 5 board plugged into it right now. So this is about the size of a Raspberry Pi, like a regular Raspberry Pi 5. But it's got some interesting options on it. So look at that. So instead of having 4 USB ports, we've got 2 USB ports and a great big stonking full-size HDMI connector on there as well. I think this is an interesting trade-off because we don't always use all of the USB connectors on our Raspberry Pis, but those micro HDMI connectors are a real pain. So having a full-size HDMI connector for me, I think is quite an interesting choice. We've got the 2 MIPI connectors at the bottom there, so we can put displays or cameras in both of those. We also have, if I flip on the back, look at this. This is one of the most requested features, I think, of the Raspberry Pi 5. A built-in NVMe port, so we can have the 2230 or the 2242 sized boards. We've also got the SD card there. Again, if you've got the eMMC version, you can't use that to boot from. We've also got a socket there for the real-time clock battery. So the real-time clock is built into this board, and we've even got a place to put a battery there, so if this doesn't have any power, it can still remember what time it is. What else have we got on here that's worth calling out? We've got the usual boot buttons that we've seen previously, and we've got a couple of other connectors on this other side here. So the second HDMI connector is actually, you can break it out there, and the other USB connectors, you can also break them out there too. So you've got loads of options on there. I really like this board. It's the same kind of form factor as a Raspberry Pi 5, but you've also got that ability to have that NVMe built on there without interfering with any other bits and pieces. You don't have to sit on the top or underneath on any kind of additional hardware. It's all built into the board. Really, really like this one. So yes, these are my sort of notes and thoughts. Raspberry Pi 5 form factor, built-in NVMe is nice. That 1x full-size HDMI is better than the 2 micro HDMI connectors, because how often do you actually use 2 display from your Raspberry Pi 5? I don't think it's that often. I think I've only done that once to sort of see that you could do that. So for this particular orientation or variant of the board, I think that's quite a good trade-off. The real-time clock battery, I think that socket, that's a really nice idea. It's an extra thing that you have to plug in with a cable on the regular Raspberry Pi 5. On this one they've built that in. It also has an encryption chip and EEPROM as well, so you can store secure things on here as well, which is pretty neat. And it's priced at $23.99 plus local shipping, local taxes and shipping, so again, very, very affordable. And let's have a look at the big daddy of them all. I'm just going to pull this board off here and plug it into this one. So this is the PoE Base A. So the feature of this main board is kind of in the name of the product. I'm just going to push this into place. And I'll just line it up. Click. It has a really satisfying click when you push the board into place. So this board has a great big what is that, capacitor, some kind of electronics for sinking a lot of power, so I think it's a transformer actually, to drop that down from whatever the power that's been provided in via the Ethernet to power everything on the board there. So this comes with power over Ethernet, no additional hats or things required. You can simply just provide that power. You have to have a PoE enabled switch, or a switch with an injector that can inject the power onto the power lines within your Ethernet cable, and then this can then step that out, break it out into the board. It has 4 USB connectors. We've got the USB 3 and the USB 2 connectors on there. We've got 2 full-size HDMI connectors, which is pretty neat. We have a USB-C to power it, which is in a really interesting orientation on this board. It's kind of like side on, you see that? I don't know why they did that. There's plenty of space on this board to have that in any other orientation. And then we've got here every size of NVMe is possible on this one. So we've even got the what's that, 2280, like the really stonkingly large ones, as well as the 2260 ones. So that refers to like how big they are. So I really like this development board. I could probably do a version 2 of the RetroPie that I built, but with this instead. Got the kind of reset button there, PSU button. What else we got on here as well worth calling out? And of course, yes, there's a great big coin cell there for the real-time clock. So an awful lot going on this board, and it's pretty big, as you can see. So these development boards, pretty big. Let's just hold that up and compare that to the official Raspberry Pi 4 development board. Let's go full screen for a second for this. As you can see there, it's very, very similar in size. I hold that one that way, for example. You can kind of see there the official Raspberry Pi 4 board versus the Compute Module 5 with PoE. So yeah, this original one didn't have PoE on it. That would be an additional extra that you've got to provide somehow. Whereas this one has it built on there. So again, I'm just going to pull this off. Comes off real easy. I don't know how you'd actually go about permanently connecting this in there, because I wouldn't like this to, I imagine if you shocked this, you hit it quite hard, it would fall out, because it is just like friction fit into there. So putting it back into this one, because we're going to be using this one for our demo in a second or two. Okay, let's get back to our slides there. So yeah, I think I've covered everything off on that slide there. This is useful if you're developing compute module applications, maybe even developing your own compute module board. Some people are able to do that who watch this channel. That's beyond my skills, I think, currently, even though I can do a little bit of PCB design. So this one is the Raspberry Pi IO dev board form factor. I like the NVMe that's built in. I think that's a really nice feature. And the 2 full-size HDMIs definitely better than the micro HDMI connectors on the regular Raspberry Pi 5. Like the built-in real-time clock, which is actually similar to what is on the official Raspberry Pi module. In fact, I've got a battery in that one there. one does keep its time. But the real feature of this one is the PoE. Now you can get the board with or without PoE. So without PoE it's $31.99, and with PoE it's $44.99 for that board. We get in all the bells and all the whistles, no compromise, but it's a big stonking board there. Cool. So a couple of ideas of projects this could work for. So like I've said, I've got this this camera here. I actually built 3 different models of this, and the 4th model that I'll be working on will essentially take one of these, possibly even this one that doesn't have all the Ethernet connectors on there, because it doesn't need them and they just add to the weight and to the bulk. This will be a lot skinnier, as you can see, as a board. I just need to get a MIPI display that we can break out. This one is a Waveshare display that just drops into place over the GPIO pins. So we could use the GPIO pins on this one for the display. It would probably just be a bit weird height-wise on there, but it's certainly something that we could definitely look at. And I think it lends itself to that because it has the display connector as well as a camera connector. So we can have that nice high-quality camera, which I've got on this one. I've actually got plans for this particular one for another project I'm currently working on and 3D printing all the parts out for. The other thing is this robot that I have over here. So let me just show you this one kind of full screen. So this is kind of the chassis. I've just printed this on the new Prusa that I've got, and this is the previous version. So this has got a Raspberry Pi 4 in it. I think it's a Raspberry Pi 4. Yes, it's got the audio jack, that's how you can tell. You can see that it takes up quite a bit of space, and I think it's actually come off its little mountings there. And it requires a Raspberry Pi 5 because of the LiDAR spits out so much data when this robot's spinning around, when it's moving around, that it needs quite a chunky processor to do that. So that's been the way that I've done this before. There's just about enough room to put in the battery, which is one of those XT60 type connectors. And this new flavour that I've been working on has some enhancements because I can now print more reliably. I've been able to design this with that kind of in mind. So the motors can slot underneath there. This is still called QB1. This will be QB1 version 2 or version 3. Got the little shelf there to put all the bits and bobs on, including this much smaller LiDAR. But look how small if we put the compute module. I'm going to grab a board here. So we only need a couple of GPIO pins, and because we can use this board that's got the 40 pin header in the middle, we can simply have this tucked to the side of the robot. Look, it takes up basically no space at all there if it's sort of stood up, that kind of orientation there. So I'm going to make a little mount so that can sit there. It's even got the USB connector if we needed to connect in the LiDAR to that, or we can just break out some of the GPIO pins for that. But look at all that space we've got in there to be able to put bigger batteries, other kind of electronics, that kind of thing. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at as a future project for that compute module. And one of the other projects, I've designed it, I just haven't finished it yet, I've not printed it. I just need to do some final tweaks to some of the parts of this, is a NAS device. So the way this is going to work, I've just got the one to hand. I've got a whole bunch of these cables. So that is a SATA connector to a USB connector. So not going to be the fastest NAS in the world, but this is more of a backup NAS rather than a sort of a live NAS. And the idea is I can just back up files to this NAS, and I can have 3 of these connectors connected to a USB hub, the official Raspberry Pi USB hub, and that can connect into either one of these boards that's got the single USB there, or it could be a full-blown, which is what I've got in this diagram here. That's using the little tray from the mini rack that I designed, which is just behind me there a while ago. And the idea is you can plug in these SD. There we go. There's the one that's got the actual cable attached. This is like a regular 2.5-inch SSD, I should say. There's the SATA connector. Got the SATA cable to USB. And plug that in, we've got the cable there. So if I've got a bunch of these, the USB hub, these just slot into the NAS there. And we've got that nice kind of design that looks very like the Synology, but powered by a Raspberry Pi. And for the software, I'm going to be using Open Media Vault, because that can do BTRFS, which is really nice featured. It's the same file system that's used on the Synology NAS. So you can do snapshots, you can send snapshots between different devices. Really, really cool. Could even run some Docker containers on there as well, depending on what size of memory that we get for our compute module. But that's the beauty of these compute modules. You can spend more money on the actual board, and then as you wish, you can take out that brain and put another brain in that's got more RAM, or potentially when there's like a Raspberry Pi 6, and if they continue that form factor, you can drop even more power in as well. Okay, so let's have a look at the boards themselves in usage. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to go to me for a second, just while I power this in. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get this. Let's go for the overhead. So I've got this over here. What I'm going to do is plug in some power and some cables to this. So I've not got the NVMe plugged in on this one. I'm simply just going to plug in a USB cable and also a keyboard and mouse. And I'm also going to put in the full-size HDMI connector as well. And you can see we've got the official Raspberry Pi monitor there. And we've already booted up. It's real quick to boot up. So let me show you how quick that is to boot up. I'm going to remove the power. Let's plug the power in. It'll come on as soon as that green light comes on there, and you can count how many seconds it takes to get to that desktop. It's pretty quick. I think there's like a mandatory number of seconds while it does its like post check. But there we are, we're ready to use the Raspberry Pi now. That's how quick it is to get up and running. So if I click on Visual Studio, you can see I've got Visual Studio there. We can go to the other alternative view there if you want to see that. Back to me there, let's go back to there. So I know that the screen's at a bit of a funny angle, but I want to be able to show you the board itself as well. So I'm actually powering this at the moment from my Mac rather than from a regular Raspberry Pi power supply. So these are actually quite low powered. They don't need quite as much power as a regular Raspberry Pi. They do get quite toasty though. It's quite hot on there. But speed wise, real quick. We can even go to what do we type to get our information? My mind's gone blank for a second. So pin out, I think it is pin out. Yeah. Pin outs. Liking that, let's type sudo pinout. Normally when you type pinout you get all the pinouts for the board, but it's saying error run. No idea what that is. It's also saying there's some updates available as well. So it works exactly the same as a regular Raspberry Pi. You don't actually have to have the desktop installed. You can run it completely headless if you want, but it's real quick. So if I just type htop, go full screen on that. Yeah, I'm basically not doing anything, and I'm not using any CPU there. I can see that we've got 4 gigs of RAM on this one because I've got a 4 gig variant. And if we look at the disk as well, this one is the 32 gig, I think, variant. So let's see, if we type in DF, you can see we have 29 gig available to the file system because there's 2 available for other bits and pieces, the temporary file system for example. So that tells me that this is a 4 gig 32 gig eMMC compute module, and it also has the Wi-Fi because I've got the Wi-Fi over here. I can see all my Wi-Fi networks. Now we can use the because we've got the board that has Ethernet capability, we can use that as well if we wanted to. So yeah, I think this is a pretty nice combo board. So what am I doing here? Going back to that camera, go back to the overhead camera there for a second. So what I want to show you now is how do we actually get the operating system loaded onto the eMMC. It's not as easy as you would expect. In fact, we have to use a special program from Raspberry Pi to do this. This is designed to be for commercial applications, so it's not quite as consumer friendly. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to load up a little terminal here. I've downloaded a piece of software from Raspberry Pi's GitHub repository that's called USB Boot. So if I show you what's in USB Boot, we've got a whole bunch of files in there, and if I want to load up the Raspberry Pi imager, I can actually embed that within the eMMC so that it's the first thing that loads and that it's the only thing that loads. So what I can do, if I go into CD into that RPI imager embedded, and I look in here, there's a little readme file. Let's catalog that readme file, and it says on here to run this, what we need to do, we need to download the latest version of the boot image, the net install boot image. So it says I need to do that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go backwards into that thing there, and then I'm going to paste that command in, run that. That's going to go and grab the latest boot image file, and that has everything. That's like when you plug in an Ethernet cable, hold down Shift on a regular Raspberry Pi, and it boots up with that network-based RPI imager. That's what that is there. So now we've downloaded that. If I go back into that, what's it called, RPI imager embedded. Okay, let's go back and read that readme file again. And it says on here we have to type in /RPI boot space -d space dot, which means the current directory. So let's do that. // that means go back the directory and run the executable. It's called RPI boot -d and then dot, which means look in this folder here. So when I do that, it's going to wait. It's going to say, I'm going to wait and see if I can find any BCME 283567 2711 2712. So all the different types of system on a chip board. So what I need to do now, if I go back to, I'm going to go back to the overhead camera here, and then I'm going to go quickly back. In fact, can I do this all on one camera? Let's see if I can do this all on one camera. So if I get this here, I'm going to remove the power, first of all. I'm going to hold down the boot button, which is there. I'm going to plug in the power, and then I'm going to release the boot button. And as soon as I do that, you can see there, sending boot image. It's reading the files. It's complaining about not being able to open a boot image, which is frustrating, as we actually did just send that to it. But that's how we actually load code onto there. Let's try just another instance of that. So let's try secure boot recovery 5. I'm going to try recovery 5. I remember when I originally did this, it took quite a bit of getting used to get this to work. So let's have a look in that readme file and see what the command is for that. So cat readme. So this one says, let's have a look, there's a couple of steps to this. So run the update EEPROM to create the image of the flash. So we have to do /update EEPROM. So it says recovery bin to update RPI EEPROM submodule run GitHub blah blah blah. So let's do that. So GitHub stores files when you're developing code, and you can actually create submodules within your GitHub. And unless you specify to download the submodules when you do a git pull, it actually just leaves them there. It doesn't pull them down because there's a lot more code behind each submodule. So it's quite a regular technique to do that. So I'm just seeing what it's doing there. That looks like it's happy with that. So let's try running that EEPROM thing again. There we go. So it's now created a new PyEEPROM original.bin. Let's read that file one more time and see what else we need to do. And then we need to do .RPI boot -d -d and then dot. So .RPI boot -d dot. And again, we need to do that that same thing where we pull the power, we hold down the boot, which is that button there, put the power back in. As soon as I release boot, you can see that it's reloading the code. It successfully sent it this time, which is good. It's reading the file. It's then sending that file to the working memory. It should actually flash the EMC with that little program, and then once it's done that, we should see hopefully the screen sort of pop to life. There we go. So the screen's gone green. It's now in its second stage boot. I can see that the drive things are flashing away there, so I'm just going to give it a second and see if anything else happens on there. I might even just turn the monitor on and off just in case there's a weird thing with the display resolution. That doesn't seem to be. So what I'll do as well, just unplug that, plug that back in. And if we now unplug the power, plug the power back in, let's see what we get on the screen. If it hasn't flashed anything to the eMMC, we'll probably just boot straight back into the Raspberry Pi OS, which is what was installed on there. So it's just doing, yeah, it's just going straight back into the Raspberry Pi OS. So that particular recovery one didn't get us anywhere differently. But these are the tools that we have to use if we want to actually flash the eMMC. It's really not very straightforward. It's not as simple as just putting power in, loading an SD card that's got the RPI imager on it or anything like that, or even having the OS completely installed on an SD card. If you have the eMMC version of the Compute Module 5, you can't boot from the SD card, so you have to use this software. So what I'll do, I'll just quickly find the repository and bring it up on screen just to show you how you actually get hold of that, because really not straightforward. Now luckily Waveshare do have all this information on their wiki site, so it is a bit more straightforward if you're trying to find this. Right, so if I go back over here, let's just bring this down here so we can actually see it. I'm just going to get rid of that, we don't need to see that. Right, so this is the Raspberry Pi /USB boot repository. And you can see in there, this is how we get our compute module set up. So a little bit of reading there to be done. If you install this on macOS, there's a few things you need to be able to install this. You need libusb boot, and you also need this package config thing. So you just need to, if you haven't got Brew installed, you'll have to go and install that as well. But yeah, different types of module have different settings that are required, and you can see there we've got these different directories. So recovery is for the Compute Module 4, recovery 5 is for the bootloader for EEPROM for Raspberry Pi 5, mass storage gadget 64, absolutely no idea what that is. Ah, there we go, secure boot recovery 5 is the bootloader flash, and let's try that one, secure boot recovery 5. I just want to see if we can actually get that to work. So if I go back folder, I go into secure boot recovery 5. Right, yeah, that looks like we might have done something on there before. So I'm just going to do cat readme. And let's see what this says. So it's that same command. Each of the tools has essentially the same command that needs to be run. I'm going to do that. Oops. I'm going to go back over here. I think the dot was missing off the end of there, perhaps. No, I'll give up. I can't remember how to do this on live stream, but essentially that was the tool that I used to get the eMMC flashed on there. A couple of other things I wanted to sort of show. So Waveshare sent yet more stuff. So mailbox wise, we've got even more to look at. So I have done a full review on kesrobots.com. I'm just currently flashing that up to the website, so that'll be available shortly after the stream. One of the things I always mark suppliers down on is if they use a lot of non-recycled packaging in their boxes. But we can see here we've got 3 boxes. Let's have a look at these. Let's see what I've been sent this week. So the first one is a nice box here. And this is actually, there's a whole bunch of bits and pieces in there. We've got a Raspberry Pi 5 case. So I put a look in there, I think it's just a regular Raspberry Pi 5 case. Yeah, there we go. I'm sure you've probably all seen these before. We've got the fan in there, and if we just pull that off, we've got all the little feet that come in there as well. Now, I think the reason that they've sent this is because of what is in this other bag that I'm holding in my hand. Let's open this up and see what it is. So there's a stonking great big transformer thing on there. This is a PoE hat. So this is Waveshare's version of the PoE hat. You can see there, PoE hat H. So this simply just connects onto the headers, the GPIO pins, as we would with our regular PoE hats. And if we provide power through our Ethernet connection, this can then take that power and power the entire Raspberry Pi 5. And look how sleek and slimline that is. That's pretty neat. There's just that stonking great big, I'm assuming it's like a transformer. It's very, very beefy, whatever it is. You tend to have those when you're trying to do power drop down. Okay, let's put that back in the bag so I don't lose that. So that's the first thing they've sent. And there's two other boxes. Let's have a look at these. So these are both 3.5 inch Raspberry Pi LCDs, but there's two different models of them. So let's see what the difference is. We might not be able to see the difference. Sometimes it's like these fast SPI connection, and they have like a cheap one that doesn't use that. So in here we have the actual screen itself. Let's see if we can see any detail on that. It's got nice rounded edges to it, and I can see there's actually quite a big bezel, do you call it? Can you see that there? Probably just about make out there that there's like quite a big bezel all the way round that. And if I flip to the back, we've got some, I've not seen these for a while, pogo pins. So these pogo pins make a really nice solid connection there, and we have some connectivity there as well. So oops, that header pin there, we connect that, and inside the box there is some cables which connect up to that. So this is a display. We've got all the, it feels really well built, by the way. I suspect this is also a touch screen, so I'll have to check on the model number. I've actually not looked at that yet. So it's nicely protected. There's some nice foam inside the box. So that will do for a camera project, and possibly even the NAS project. We could have the display on the front of the NAS. And then there's another version of this. Let's see what this is. So again, we've got they're the cables that came on the other one that were inside the box. So you can see there they break out to regular DuPont connectors. And then we have, it looks very, very similar, but the model number is different, so that suggests that there is a slight difference in what these actually do. So there we go. This is another 3.5 inch. So that one doesn't have that bezel on it. That's just the display. You can see that it's got the display protector on it because there's a bit of a scuff there, but you can see that's really nice quality. I think the very first display I had was a Waveshare display for one of my projects. So that's a Waveshare that's on the back of there. I've not actually powered this one up for a while, but I'm going to be using CinePi on this. I've just not got around to installing CinePi on that. It's another project to be done on another day. Right, let's get that display back in there. And I'll put links to all these once I've had a play with them on kevrobots.com. In fact, I'll probably do a write-up and review of these. So if you go over to kevrobots.com very, very soon, I've actually not flashed that up yet, but very, very soon you'll be able to look at the 4 reviews for each of those different compute module boards. Cool. So Pierre is actually asking, I wonder if there's a reference diagram to build your own Compute Module 4.5 carry board available. Yes, if you go to Raspberry Pi's documentation website, they have all the information that you could possibly dream of for building your own carrier boards. I think there is a level of skill required to design the PCBs available for Compute Module boards. You probably need to know quite a bit of electronic stuff to do that level of stuff, but if you know that, they have all that information on the website. Cool. So every week we do talk about the products that are available on KevsRobots.com. So let me give a quick showcase of these. So these are a couple of the things that you can get on KevsRobots.com. We've got the gamepad. These are selling like hotcakes. I think we've nearly run out of the first batch of 100 that we bought. So these are real fun. Very, very easy to get these up and running and your code running on them. And we've actually used these on a number of different projects to build a Bluetooth remote control for our robot project. So I'm even going to get this working on the QB robot as well. So we've got all the up, down, left, right, backwards and forwards. We've got some other buttons on there. A, B, X and Y as well. And then on the display we've even got a menu select and start buttons there, and this is completely programmable. You can do anything you want on here. In fact, as a demo program I had the Pico Tamachibi code running on this as well. So that's one of the things you can get, and these are only £6 plus shipping plus local taxes. So get those. And the Robot Maker's Almanac, you definitely want to get yourself one of these. It's got all the GPIO pins, all the pins and dimensions that you could possibly dream of for all common microcontrollers, Arduinos, Raspberry Pis and so on. And if you want to get yourself one of these packs of 3 maker notes, I do all my doodlings in here for projects, and I'm thinking about what I'm working on. So head over to KevsRobots.com, get yourself a pack of those maker notes, get yourself a Robot Maker's Almanac or 2, and definitely get yourself a couple of the PCBs that are on there. Got loads of the servo helper ones available as well. And if you've not joined our Discord community, you definitely want to head over to KevsRobots.com/Discord and get yourself a free account on our Discord server. People are sharing all the kind of projects they're working on. You can even ask for help on there, and you're probably going to get a better response than if you email me directly, which people seem to do on a weekly basis. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on all the social media platforms. I'm on Threads at KevMcAleer at threads.net. I'm on TikTok at KevMcAleer6. I'm on Instagram at KevMcAleer. I'm on X at KevsMac. I'm on Mastodon at kevsmac at mastodon.social. And I'm also on Blue Sky at kevsmac.bsky.social as well. So if you're on any of those platforms, drop me or tag me and say hi and show me what kind of project you're working on. And if you want to see what kind of projects I'm working on, definitely follow me on those social platforms, because all the projects I'm currently working on, I'll be sharing links to that, including the QB that I'm currently working on, as well as the NAS and the camera project. So there's a whole bunch of things on there that you'll be able to follow me on. And if you want to get your name in the end credits, you can do that simply by going to KevsRobots.com/coffee, and all the instructions are on there, so you'll be able to get your name in the end credits. So let's have a look at the people who've done exactly that. So we have a new YouTube member this week. We've got Charlie White, who's just joined the YouTube channel. So thank you and welcome, Charlie. We've got Bert, Dale from Hybrid Robotics. We've got Marie, Michael, Steve, Ford, Bello, Oxrad39, Littleback, Paul, Johnny, Stephen, John Paul, Cassie, Tinkering Rocks, Johnny and Tom. And then over on the other side, it's the reverse side for me, so I always get confused. Nobody's bought me coffees in the past month, so I had a little cry about that earlier, but I'm sure I'll be fine. Member-wise, we've got Silicon Fiber, Marie TKD, we've got Andrew, Shemi, Jeff, Corty, Marlene, and of course we have Tom. So thank you everybody that's supported me on my channel so far. You make what I do possible, so I can't thank you enough for your support on that. Right, let me go back to my slides there. And the little spinny logo thing, I've actually been working on a little theme for Kevs Robots, but I'll give you a little demo of it if you want now, and then we'll move towards the end of the show. But this is a kind of a work in progress little theme tune thing. I wanted it kind of a retro, computery, robot-y kind of thing. So if I can find where I put it, I think, is it on my NAS? Not sure whether you can hear that on the microphone or not, so definitely let me know on there while I look for this beautiful piece of music. Where on earth have I put it? I bet I can't actually find this now that I'm looking for it. Where did I put it? Was it under music? I can't believe I can't find this now. So home. Let me do a search for it. I think I called it Kev's Robots theme. So I used Logic for iPad to produce this. There we go, Kev's Robots theme. So Dean Jones says, so thrilled that you'd be at Maker Central. We'll be doing a talk. So I've not been invited to do any talk. So if I am doing a talk, it'll just be me stood in the corner. Maybe one year they'll invite me to do that, but not this year. So where did I put this? Maybe under work. If I can't find it, it'll have to be next week. I think I might have to find this for next time, because it's not presenting itself under the pressure of the live stream video. No, I can't see where that is. So anyway, over here, YouTube will be recommending one of the 400 odd videos from the back channel, from my YouTube channel. It thinks you'll like the best. So if you've not checked out this particular video, I'm sure you'll love it. And thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.